When I knew you, one of the things you talked to me about when I first met you, I'll never forget this, and it's been a long time ago, was how you had kind of run afoul of the law and you were going down this path, and gradually now you're here, right? Telling other people how to stay positive. How did your life and crime, because that's what we talk about so much on our podcast, how were you able to escape that snare that drags so many adults down, Jeff? Oh, that's right. I did, and I
And
still
my
have
mom
the.
used to watch you, and you did the reviews on movies. So,
Still do that.
nonetheless,
Still do that. Just do it here.
okay, but nonetheless, I do remember just to give a little context of sort of me being from the Quad Cities, right? So, how did I escape the snare of sort of that revolving door, right? And I would not say that there was a couple different things that took me to a place that allowed me to escape those snares. And one of the things was is that at some point it was through mentorship. It was through people in unlikely places, actually people who I was incarcerated with who were much older than me, sort of took me under their wing and sort of started providing information to me. They provided guidance to me. And even though I was a rambunctious young man, they still took the time because they saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And I can remember while being, incarcerated, just thinking to myself, man, all these different people kept coming and going. And I watched that revolving door. And I just said to myself over and over again, when I'm able to finally get out, there's just no way in the world I'm gonna keep coming back. So for me, it was a verbalized testimony that I wanted to uh, make into a living testimony. So I would say that is the beginning of the sort of um, opportunity I had to escape that snare that you described.
So you got involved with the Safer Foundation, I think early on.
Yeah. So at some point, going through my incarceration, there was the opportunity to learn about programs in my area because up to that point I had went in as a teenager. I come out, I'm 24 years old, and they're telling me I need to learn some job skills, right? And they're telling me about the resources. So, and I knew just because I saw people coming and going that Safer Foundation was one that did that in our community. So for me, when I got out, that was one of the first places I took a and made a beeline for because I wanted and I needed the assistance. So it was one of the first places I stopped at, which was, hey, I need a job. I'm on parole. Can you help me?
And they did. And then
Absolutely.
you became a board member, right?
Yes, yes. Eventually, over time of making lots of mistakes, but I'm also a believer that the only way I can be successful is by making mistakes. But through making lots of mistakes and different other jobs, I eventually made my way to the point of actually joining the board. And me actually starting to work, I actually was working for Safer before that though. And I sort of described that story of how that came about, right? Um, so the former director, Sue Davison, she was actually my community resource person, sort of my um probation connection as far as like for when I was younger. And so she was the person that after school, she was the person that me and other youth needed to be with in order to keep us out of trouble. So I continued to go on and get more trouble. But when I got out and eventually I furthered my education, when I did get to a point where I went and applied for the job, lo and behold, Sue was the one that's doing the interview. And so for me, it was like, wow, another 360, right? So she sat down and we sat down and I said, I remember you. And she's like, and I know who you are. And she's like, she looks at me and she's like, Jeff, yes, I do remember you. And so that's how I really got immersed into Safer was by coming in and actually getting um, hired to be a program manager of the of the at-risk program that was for kids who were alternatives, who needed to be taken out of detention, in an alternative program, and I ran that for a couple of years. And then after I stopped doing that, I eventually became a board member.
So mentorship was the first thing out of your mouth right now, and you know, you don't think perhaps of people who are incarcerated as being mentors, but they can be, and they were for you. Sue, I think, has mentored a lot of people in her life, I mean, including me, honestly. But it's interesting when we hear people talk about young people, they say, oh, lock them up and throw away the key. That's a terrible, terrible doomsday attitude. Do you think, now you're only one person, but do you think that mentorship early on can halt some of the juvenile crime that's been popping up?
Oh, I absolutely know it can. And I'll just give you just a short example of how it exhibited itself for me, and how it exhibited itself and how I was mentored at that young age. Well, one of the things that was utilized to mentor me while I was incarcerated was the game of chess. And I can distinctly remembering being taught about the pieces and so forth. You always hear about the pieces, and you hear about the, rooks and bishops and pawns. And when you hear a pawn, you always keep thinking, my God, the pawn is the one that's always being used. And I would always be posed the question, which is the most powerful piece? And so if you follow me with this for a second, I'm going to explain to you how this connects, and how mentorship allows people to see the best in ourselves. And when that question was posed to me, I often said, my God, well, it has to be the queen, it has to be the king. But in fact, the way I was taught, and it makes perfect sense as I started living life a little bit more, the pawn is the most powerful, because at first it looks weak. At first it looks like it has no power, but it has the most potential. So when you look at mentorship, you're looking at being able to see what others can't see in themselves. So for me, and looking at that pawn, if you guide it, you direct it, you protect it. It is the only piece on the whole entire board that can get to the end of the board and be whatever piece you want it to be. That's true potential. That is actually being mentored through the end of the board. While the rook can only be the rook, the bishop can only be the bishop. So, but that example is how you have to look at mentorship. It is truly looking at someone else with the ability and with the power to be more than what you actually see in front of them. So when people take that same understanding and mindset, Linda, and they look at that young person and they pour into them, not in the way that they appear or what they've done, but in what they can be, that is what sets aside that ability for that person to be successful.
Can anybody mentor? How can, because we hear people complain constantly, oh, the crime, oh, the crime.
Absolutely. I got mentors and they don't even know it. And the thing about it is that anytime you exhibit and you care for others in a way that you would want yourself cared for, that's mentoring. But if you want to go and you take the time just to contribute, just to be a positive force, that's mentorship. You're I don't know, people don't realize sometimes they're mentoring the other kids in the neighborhood. They're, coaches, we hear about them, coaches and teachers and so forth, but mentorships happens all the time. It's all around you, and you're doing it, you don't even realize it. The difference is being intentional about it. So once you recognize you have that power to influence because of the fact that someone's looking at you and listening to you, that's you tapping into the fact that you are a mentor. So yeah, anybody can mentor. It's just about, can you see beyond that person's moment so you can invest in them like they can live tomorrow?
Wow. Have you known anyone who could not have benefited from it? So far gone.
Yeah, here the thing is that there's a one, there's tons of different ways to encourage people to do well, to curriculums out there to that set up people for success. But the one that is probably the most fundamental to any curriculum or any pedagogy that you're going to use is motivational interviewing. And what that is this here is you meet people where they're at, and people hear that and they say, "Oh, that makes sense." But what it really means is this: is that if you are if someone wants to, for example, quit smoking, right, or quit gambling, and they're not really open to it, well, you don't meet them with the resolution that they're ready to quit. You meet them with the idea that they're not even ready to quit. So you're probably just feeding them information, right? The problem when people aren't successful with it is because they're meeting people not where they're at, but where they want them to be. And you can't do that. You have to actually meet them where they're at. So if they're at the predisposition and pre-contemplation, then that's where you got to meet them at. If they're at the post-contemplation, then that's where they're at. And that's when you got to bring those tools. See, when it comes to mentoring, teaching, or anything like that, you got to take a process-focused approach rather than a result-driven focus. And what that means is this. Um, I was one of the things I was able to do in my life was be a professor, right? And so what I noticed is that a lot of professors struggled with the students because um, they wanted them to provide results. And I would explain to them when you are result focused, you're going to be frustrated because you're really truly planting a tree with a seed that you'll never yield the shade from. You're just planting seeds. And so no one sits down, plants a seed, and watches that tree grow. No, you should water it and cultivate it. So when you're process focused, you're letting the process take care of itself. And once you do that, then you become solution focused. You don't take things personal, and you're able to actually take the time to see that this does work. But if you go on a result focus, then you're going to look for immediate wins and it just won't happen. So the key is being able to understand yourself, your approach, and truly read the room and meet youth where they're at. So I have never seen this not helping someone when you actually do those three things.
Sharon does that every day and probably doesn't realize it. She works days here. So the new reporters that come in, Sharon's one of the people who mentors them. And she doesn't just teach them to write better or report better, she truly mentors them. So at night, I hear Sharon said this.
Uh-oh.
So, well, but you don't realize it. You don't realize that, Sharon, what an influence you're having on people.
Well, but you influence us too because court things come up and it's like, well, Linda would know what to do.
Not necessarily. Then I ask you.
You taught me everything I know about crime.
Right.
Yes. Hi, we're back.
She also has taught for Blackhawk a great many classes. So not just a teacher can be a mentor. And I think people have to realize, even if you live next door to somebody, you can mentor that troubled person, regardless of their age.
Yeah, and I think the key, you guys, is really about finding the right fit so you can read the room correctly and also being self-aware. If you're not suited and booted to work with adolescent youth, then you should probably stick with, younger elementary age youth. But if or vice versa, right? So it's really understanding what you bring to the table. But I truly believe that if either you came in and you have a new reporter coming in and you go in there and say, you're going to learn this at the end of this conversation, and they don't learn it, you know that you're going to be, it can be frustrating. But if you go in and say, I'm going to lay this out for you, these are the tools. Now let's see what you do with them. And they learn how to use the tools, then you'll be less frustrated because now they're using what comes natural to them based on the tools you gave them. So I think that's really when it's about mentoring.
Jeff, in your Jeff Wallace Speaks, do you deliver motivational speeches? What do you do with your brand? And how can people get hold of you? How can people reach?
Yeah, so Jeff Wallace Speaks is my YouTube channel, and my YouTube channel, what I do is I put out just multiple different type of videos, shorts, and stuff like that. And what I'm doing is just I'm planting seeds, and so they can always go into there to YouTube channel, and they can check out some of the different things that I put out there. Some of the times, this is one thing that I did with my brand is I do lots of different public speaking events, right? And so one of the and I always go to, and wherever I go, I'm usually speaking for something with juvenile justice. I go to to their local juvenile facility free of charge, and I just talk with the youth, right? And so one of the things that one of the things I posted on my channel was I went to a juvenile detention center, and the kids had looked at some of the videos I did. They had tons of questions. They looked at my TED talk. They looked at both of them. They had tons of questions based on that. Asked really good questions. We ran out of time though, right? It was that exciting. So I told them, I said, I tell you what, I'm gonna go to my YouTube channel. I am going to take all you guys' questions and I'm going to answer all of them that are on there. And so that's what I did. So once I got it uploaded, I sent the facility the link, and then the kids were able to see my response to their questions, right? And then with my brand, I also with them because I love reading. We actually took the book The Alchemist, which is about finding your purpose in life, and I did just a book club with them, and we went over the Alchemist. So you'll see that on there. You'll see me providing, yeah, some inspiration, different ways of looking at things, tools, actionable tools. I do that with my brand. If things are different, I may go to different facilities depending on what they have going on, and assist with consulting them. If they're working with youth. And then currently, I'm trying to write a book, and I've been searching that out. I've been looking for someone to do some ghost writing, some co-writing, co-authoring, and I've gotten a lot of that done. And my book is going to really consist of the different lessons I learned in life based on different experiences I had, and my experiences are based on being a young man in abject poverty to getting kicked out of school, going to alternative school to eventually getting waived to adult court, spending 4 years in solitary confinement, eventually getting out, going back, eventually to get my different college degrees, and eventually um, going back to work in the same facilities that I lived in as a kid. And then one of the things that I'm probably most proud and that's been most impactful for me when I think about it is I used to live on Ripley Street, right there by St. Ambrose, where now it's a parking lot. And I can remember going on that campus as a young kid, and a lot of times I would be, chased off. I wasn't always doing the right thing. But one of the most significant things that happened going back and get my education is that same college that I ended up getting, kicked off the campus a lot. I went back there and got my master's degree. So that for me was pretty phenomenal. So yeah, my book is going to go through all that, the lessons I've learned, the strategies I've used in life, the downfalls, um, and all the different people I met along the way that gave me tons and tons of advice and were mentors. Some knew it and some never knew it at all.
This is great, Jeff. I can't thank you enough for sharing this with us. Sharon, I hogged this. I'm sorry.
You know him. I was just listening.
I do know him, but not as well as I did half an hour ago.
Well, there you go.
So, Jeff, thank you. Is there anything else you want to add?
No. I think that I appreciate you guys taking the time to talk to me. There's tons more things out there. Sort of, I always say that my life has been a full circle, right? Because one of the things that I actually ended up, getting in trouble for was actually escaping a juvenile facility. And I remember eventually over time, what I did for 6 years when I got out of prison first is I actually went back to that same facility, and I for free just volunteered and mentored and ran groups with those kids. And eventually that same facility I went back to actually work at. Then after working there, I eventually became a director there. And then over time, I eventually became the person who worked for as a social worker, who went back there and worked with kids there. And then eventually I licensed that facility. So my life has been a full 360, and all the things along the way is what allowed me to be who I am today. So yeah, lots of more things out there. And I'm hoping that if I can find someone to really help get this book together, it would be great.